Welcome to MTV Cribs Germany edition for me. It's a new setting, new background again. Next week, provided all goes well, will be a return to form, back to a familiar setting for me. Um, and I suppose you're going to stay put, but you're going to Watkins Glen in the meantime. So not staying put for too long, I'd assume. Um, I'll tell you what, we are due an apology, or we owe an apology. I guess I do. Having to move this episode around a little bit. It was supposed to be 9 p.m. Central European time, and then moved it to 10. Or sorry, moved it to 11. And then we missed that because we were having issues with the mic. So noticed an issue with that in last week's show. Hopefully that's all fixed for this one. I guess we'll find out. Stu, you said it's working. How are you doing tonight?
It's good. It's not even tonight yet. This is odd, right? Like
it's so weird for me. It's 11 at night here.
Yeah, it's 5:10 Eastern time for me, even earlier than our episode last week. So, it's a busy time coming off of. You were at the 24 hours of Le Mans. Like I said it over the weekend. Like I got the memo about a big race going on in a French speaking place on that weekend, but I just booked. I went to the wrong race. I went to the F1 race in Montreal instead. So I still got to see racing. I guess I got to see some Porsches on track because the Porsche Cup was there, but didn't quite get to see the scream of sports cars down the Mulsanne Straight like you got to see. So a little bit jealous of that, but but the busy time in the sports car world, right? 24 hours of Le Mans last weekend. We got the 6 hours of the Glen this weekend, plus the 24 hours of the Nürburgring 24, which is what you're going to be going and
hang on
and experiencing. I got you.
We're on unpredictable Wi-Fi here, so.
Oh, we have some technical difficulties. I think we're all good though. I think we're all good. You're glitching a little bit, but I think we can make it through this. But yeah, there's so much in the sports car world going on. 24 hours of Spa is what is next, the weekend after all this as well. Is it 24-hour races in a row?
It's 3 in a row. For the ridiculous ones trying it. I'm not one of them.
Yeah, no, you thought about it though. To be fair, you thought about it.
I thought about it, and then I thought about after the 24 this past weekend. I was like, boy, I'll tell you what, 6 months ago, I was real smart when I made that decision to not do it. because
it's not very often that you look back at like past decisions that you've made and think of them as smart. Usually you look back on some of those decisions and you're like, man, what was I thinking when I signed myself up for this? So yeah, that deserves a pat on the back.
Yeah, 100%. We got a lot to talk about from Le Mans. First of all, you mentioned the Canadian Grand Prix, and don't worry, I'm not going to talk about that for that long because I barely even know who won that race. That's one of the events I wasn't able to catch hardly any of. But luckily, we don't have to talk about that on the show. We're here to talk about the 24 hours of Le Mans this past weekend, and we're going to finish up the episode talking about a little bit of a preview with the 6 hours at the Glen, which you're going to this weekend. I, for obvious reasons, will not be there. But it's a race I've attended a couple times in the past.
You don't want to be in two places at once across the Atlantic?
I wouldn't turn it down if I had the ability, but we'll take it.
Unfortunately, our technology is not quite there yet.
Well, our technology is hardly holding together to run this damn show right now. So we'll take it.
It's working for now, though. Let's be nice.
Where do we even start for Le Mans? There is a ton to talk about. I made a post over on Twitter /X. If we're, let's just start off here, giving some sleep deprived thoughts of the race. First of all, longest 24-hour race, or longest amount of time I've ever been awake for a 24-hour race, which to me was a surprise because usually, at least when you're in person, I would always assume Le Mans would be the more difficult race. It ends comparing this to the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Let's just start off by saying that it's a race you have to get to a lot earlier. It is a lot busy. Like, it's not even comparable how much busier that race is to the 24 hours of Daytona. Not to say that as a knock to Daytona in any means, but it's just a different league. So you got to get there early. Race ends or starts and ends at 4 p.m. local, not Daytona, which is kind of moving around a little bit, but like usually 1:45 ish, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you get a couple of extra hours there. I remember specifically, it was about 1:30 in the afternoon. A few hours left in the race this past weekend, and I was like, "Oh, if this was Daytona, I'd have 20 minutes left and I'd be out of here." And I got hours left, and I got to just try to stay awake. I think I only slept for like a half hour, and I'm
Wow.
still sort of catching up on that now.
I
Uh,
bet.
so if I'm missing some details on this show on this episode, then that's my blame.
Hey, listen, we,
Um,
we we have excuses, but people aren't coming to us for the detailed rundown of the race. They're coming to us for our piping hot takes, right?
well, that you're coming to us to ask questions in the chat if you have any questions.
It's true.
We'll try to get to those later on, and I think mainly the way I wanted to structure this show is talk a little bit about what it was like and some of the things I noticed there at the track. Now,
Yeah.
luckily, I did have my trusty Radio Le Mans in my ear for the entirety of the race. Can never get enough of Johnny Palmer, John Hindhaugh, Paul Trustwell, I suppose. But that is a huge help for actually staying informed of what was going on,
Yeah.
rather than some of the other races like Sebring when I was just completely blind, as you may remember from that show. Let's start off here. Well, let's start off with the hypercar category. Why not? I
Yeah.
mentioned in last week's show, I thought that this was going to be the big three for this race would be Ferrari, Porsche, and Toyota. I really was holding true to that all the way through qualifying last week. Toyota certainly wasn't at the same level in qualifying, but I knew that they had shown similar things in 23 and 24. And figured they would be there in the race. Ultimately, this really came down to a two-horse show, I suppose. Depending on who you ask, some people will say no,
Yeah.
this was Ferrari through and through, and nobody else had a chance. And you can get argument, and we can discuss that in the show if you'd like. But I'm going to at least sit here and say this was a two-pony show. Between Ferrari and Porsche. And it's really interesting if you think about it. It was kind of set up perfectly, right? Like you have the team over here that's dominant in the World Endurance Championship this season, and then on the other side you have the IMSA team that's been undefeated apart from the last race at Detroit, where they were still in contention to win for quite a while.
Yep.
And you get a sort of clash between the two of them at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the biggest race they're going to be running this season. Want to get some of your takes on that first, sort of this clash of the titans, because we don't get to see that over in the IMSA WeatherTech Championship. Of course, Ferrari is not present there, and Porsche, for the most part, in WEC this season, really hasn't been much of a factor apart from this race.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting to, see kind of how things unfolded through the weekend as a whole. Um, I guess, especially in hypercar here, because, as we saw the practice sessions, carrying on, it really looked like there were going to be a good handful of manufacturers that could have a shot at potential and the pace to maybe pull off a Le Mans win. You had Ferrari, you had Porsche, there was Toyota that was in there. Cadillac obviously showed some pretty good pace, locking out the front row in hyperpole. And then you also had maybe some longer shots there. I guess BMW, BMW showing some decent pace in the practice sessions as well. You had some of your longer shots like an Alpine, for instance, which I mean they were my pick, acknowledging that was a risky pick, but it did look like that they could have the pace to contend. So hypercar was looking like it could be a really good battle throughout the field as we turned over to race day. And you know what? To be fair, the hypercar battle, you're right. It was definitely a two pony show, and you might even say that it was it was a one horse show, and then there was a quick like donkey or something that was masking as a horse in this one that was kind of sneaking in there, because the number six, the six Porsche ran a great race, to a perfect race, and to be able to get up there and finish in second, when it really didn't seem like, the Porsche, they were still that step behind where the Ferraris were on pace. It seemed like, and so there was that battle at the top, but I would say that I guess if we could call it the midfield battle in this one was really strong. You had Toyota who showed pace. There were the other Porsches were kind of in this midfield battle. You had the Cadillacs, the Alpines for some of it. Like that, there was some good action that took place in the midfield battle of this, but really at the end of the day, this, like, for me, coming out of this race, I think that, like, Ferrari had clearly has an incredibly strong car this year in the World Endurance Championship. And they had that on full display this weekend. I mean, they crossed the line first, third, and fourth, right? So it was it was a very, very strong race for Ferrari. Of course, one of them did end up getting disqualified, but I mean, it doesn't sound like it was anything, malicious that caused that disqualification. Some bolts falling out in the late going. There may have been some damage likely that may have caused that. Who knows? But I think Ferrari really flexed their muscle here. Really, for the 83, the 83 entry, that sister car, that non-factory, entry to go out and win is a really big deal. And great for Kubica, Yiffaye, and Phil Hansen to pull out that win. But yeah, I was watching the end of it, and I was like, man, I was really hoping that we were going to have some different manufacturers that were up there running in the hunt for this year at Le Mans, but didn't really come to fruition. I don't know what you kind of had thoughts on that on the ground at the race for, because you're going to be getting a different vibe than we're going to be getting, sitting at home, or in my edition, I was sitting in the car watching the race. So, yeah, what were your kind of thoughts on the top hypercar battles? And
well, I can certainly tell you that most people. Well, I don't want to speak for everybody at the track because I don't know what most people.
No, speak for everybody at the track.
In general, I would say 95% of the people there are going to tell you that Ferrari were the obvious favorite. And Porsche, I think, is what most people agreed was really the only manufacturer that are going to hold a candle to them. Cadillac, really, to me, was a standout in how much pace they lacked in the race. I think a lot of people looked at qualifying and thought they would be a strong contender as well. I was pretty close to knocking Cadillac up into that top three after I saw them put that 1-2 out in qualifying. But just ultimately, they didn't have the pace in the race, like at all. And to me, that was one of the standout moments as well, is just the fact that they weren't there. Bourdais was very vocal about that in the lead up to the race, and saying that, okay, don't expect us to be in contention anywhere in this one. We're not at the same level as Ferrari. He kind of implied that Ferrari was sandbagging in qualifying, maybe just to make sure that they weren't going to be slammed with a pre-race BOP adjustment. I'm going to leave that up to whatever you want to take about that. If you want to believe that, go ahead. If not, I'm not going to change your mind. But certainly one of the things he was trying to hammer home a lot during the race as well, when he was interviewed there. But in general, to bring it all back, I'd say, yeah, Toyota or Ferrari number one for the majority of people there. And then Porsche sort of in there. Some people said they didn't even have a shot at all. I think they made it interesting. Let's just say that.
No, they did. They did.
I mean, and this sort of brings forward the next point I want to bring here, which is we're talking about a race that was extremely unique compared to what we saw in 2024, which last year we had a record amount of safety car running in the race. And this year was extremely clean, at least in terms of how few we only had one safety car in the race. It was about halfway through. I think some of the criticism that this race was getting was multiplied due to the fact that we didn't have a bunch of safety car intervention brakes stacking the field back up. I mean, you have to remember that last year when we did have that exciting sort of battle to the finish between Ferrari and Toyota, we had a very long safety car period in the middle of the race that lasted all the way until well after the sun went up. So you're going through with a fresh restart.
Fog last year?
Well, it wasn't so much fog. It was really just heavy rain. And then they were waiting.
Visibility. It was poor visibility.
Yeah. I personally, well, I'm not talking about last year's race. But that's a whole separate ball game. And I think that's where people sometimes lose. I'm trying to think of the best way to word this, but you have to realize that what we had at Le Mans this year was a completely different race than, say, a Rolex 24 or a Petit Le Mans or even Le Mans last year, where you have a lot of safety car brakes that are bringing the field back together. Again, you can argue that both ways. You can say that that's a negative. So I've seen some people saying that's a negative, that we don't have enough safety cars in the race and that the field wasn't bunched up enough. I've definitely seen those takes this week. I personally don't agree with it. I thought, for one, it was extremely refreshing to have a race that you can look at. And the main thing with me, I much preferred this race to last year's one, even though it probably wasn't as exciting in terms of just raw on-track action. The finish certainly wasn't as dramatic as last year either. I think it was a lot less controversial than last year's. One of the things that stood out to me from last year is how many things we were looking at and saying, oh, they could have changed something here. They should have done this differently. I don't really like the fact that this happened.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I don't have a whole lot of those this year. You can say, sure, the balance between the hypercars could have been better. But to me, there's not a whole lot of decisions in the race that I look at and say, should have done it differently. I really like the way this race panned out.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points there, especially with, being able to see this race really play out like it did was really refreshing. That's something that we certainly don't get here in IMSA. Stateside. It is something that we get more in the World Endurance Championship and in just the nature of some of those circuits, but it hasn't been something that we've seen at Le Mans for a little while. I do not remember a recent Le Mans that hasn't had that's had as few stoppages in the race as this one did. So that did. You're right. It was absolutely refreshing to see it play out that way. And, I also saw those comments too about, should we bunching up the fields, not having not very many instances where the field was bunched up, wasn't exciting and all that. But at the end of the day, there was still good racing that took place in this, right? It was a different Le Mans than what we've seen in previous years. We got to see these cars, go for 12 hours straight, essentially 11 and a half for 12-hour stints, basically, full go and see where the dust settled. And that's what we got to see. And, maybe, in seeing that, it highlighted some of the shortcomings, maybe in some of the performance of some of the cars, whether that's BOP related, whether that's just flat out performance related as well. We can't forget that, just because a car has a good BOP doesn't mean that they can execute at that level throughout a 24-hour race. So it maybe highlighted a few of those things. But that being said, we saw plenty of strategy play out. There were a lot of penalties that were factoring into this one as well. Pit road speeding penalties, some track cutting penalties as well. I remember hearing about, there was a lot of stuff going on to still keep everybody that was watching this race really engaged in what was happening. So I agree with you there. Like, it wasn't, it didn't have all the stoppages, it didn't have all the bunching up that we had last year, but it still put on a good show, a different show than what we've been used to the past few years at Le Mans. Um, but still fun to watch, regardless.
Yeah, that's the thing I took out of it. I think as an endurance racing fan, and this is going to be one of the things I love about the Nürburgring 24 this weekend, is the fact that at the end of it, come the end of 24 hours, or hopefully we make it the full 24 this year, we're going to look at the winner and say this is a car that was consistently the best over 24 hours. This is not a car that was the fastest in the final half hour of the race, but was kind of for the first 23 and a half.
And survived.
Absolutely. That's the other huge part of it as well. There's actually the proof is in the pudding with all of this. If you look at how much distance they covered this year, we were only 10 laps off the overall distance record that was set back in 2010. And for what it's worth, I really don't think, let's put it this way. If you want to break the distance record with the current cars and the speed that they're doing there, you would essentially have to run 24 hours, 0 safety cars, and maybe 0 slow zones as well. I mean, it would be very close. I think from the very beginning, the first couple hours when we had like absolutely nothing, we were tracking at like 400 laps, maybe like 398. But this was, to my recollection, the third farthest distance ever covered, only behind 2010 and 1971, both running 397 laps. 2010 takes the ultimate prize because the track was a little bit longer.
It's impressive.
But yeah, this was a race that went the distance, and it's again a huge 180 from what we saw last year.
Yeah. One of the things that I know we talked about maybe earlier this year, maybe after this race last year, was the qualifying and having, the Hyperpulse, the different qualifying sessions, the Hyperpulse session. Being there in person, seeing this all play out this year, what were your thoughts on that? Has your tune kind of changed at all on it? Because we did have some exciting qualifying sessions.
I'll keep it simple. It pretty much it's unchanged. Was it exciting at the track? Yes. Were there also moments at the track where I was sitting here saying, yeah, this could really be like a one qualifying session and then you just have one Hyperpole session for each class? Yes. To be honest with you, in a perfect world, the thing I would do, mainly because they didn't get a lot of attention in the Hyperpole session, they split up the Hypercar class into its own session, and then they put LMP2 and LMGT3 in their own session as well. And so when we had the LMP2 LMGT3 session going out, one of those sessions there was like absolutely no coverage of the GT3 cars at all. Maybe for like a few seconds they were on screen, but I picked up on that at the track, and I also saw a ton of people pick up on that on social media as well. I've said it before. I'm going to keep it very brief. In a perfect world, I would have one qualifying session, give them an hour to go out there and set a time. Let's keep it even more simple. The top 12 cars or the top 10 cars from each class advance to a Hyperpole session. And then you give each one of those either 15 or 20 minutes to go set a time. So you get 15 for Hypercar, 15 for LMP2, 15 for LMGT3. That's the way I would do it. I think right now it's a little bit too difficult to explain. It's a little bit too drawn out. And I can't sit here and say that having that second Hyperpole session added any excitement to the race, or not to the race, but to the event itself.
Yep. I really agree with that point about separating LMGT3 and LMP2 as well. Separate them, take out, like you said, that first session, rearrange that time, and let them have their individual session, give them their time in the spotlight, because it's Le Mans. Like they deserve to have their dedicated moment in the spotlight here to show what they can do in qualifying, because the hype at the end of the day, the actual hyperpole portion of it, that last, dash, the top, whatever for pole was exciting. Being able to see that play out, it was fun to watch that, but yeah, not necessary to have a bazillion sessions leading up to that. To slowly narrow it down.
We've been unchanged since day one on that, then, I guess. You and I both. Since they announced
I was just watching qualifying, and I was thinking, like, does this change my opinion this year? So yeah, not much has changed, clearly.
Yeah. Well, let's give some of those other classes some time in the spotlight then, because the TV direction sometimes didn't. Talk about LMP2. This is the only race in the World Endurance Championship where we'll be seeing them this year. Let's highlight one team in particular, who better than the team that won, Inter-Europol. Been on a real hot streak recently. Of course, they won this race this year. They won back in 2023 as well, and they finished runner-up last year. It's not just over here. If you look stateside, if you look over in IMSA championship last year in LMP2 class, they also backed that up with a Sebring victory this year. Pretty strong run they're on right now, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know what they're feeding their Orica, but whatever it is, the other teams are going to catch on pretty quick, and it's been a dominant run for them.
You know what's crazy is I heard there were certain drivers that were, I don't know if complaining is the right word, but at least noting top speed issues that they were having in LMP2 this year. Mm-hmm. And I was like, where are you going with this? Because we're all running the same car here. Like, this isn't like what's the end goal here? I never thought I'd live to see the day with BOP complaints in a spec class, but I don't think that's what they're doing. But I thought it was
I don't know if it's BOP complaints that they're talking about. Maybe they know something that the general public doesn't know about the prep of some of those cars, but it would be difficult to have that big of a top speed difference, unless if you're getting a massive tow. But
okay, so we're gonna fire up the engines later here. We're gonna talk about BOP for a few minutes and not more. But I think that right there is a perfect indication as to why BOP is not everything.
Yeah.
Once you have LMP2 teams saying, "Oh, well, our car wasn't as quick on the straight as their car," well, okay, you're running the same car, you're running the same engine.
Yeah,
there's other factors at play. So I don't know. We'll get into that a little bit later here. I'm going to save that for the end.
Yeah.
What's that?
Maybe the driver just needs to get a heavier foot.
Well,
hammer down.
We'll keep them waiting on that one.
Yeah.
But
yeah, sorry, go ahead. Inter-Europol.
Well, I was just going to talk about Inter-Europol, and I pretty much already said what I needed to say there. But I think you had something you wanted to jump in there with as well.
Oh, well, I was going to mention, was it VDS that was right in the battle with them at the end, but they had a mechanical gremlin that they were dealing with towards the end of the race, I think, right?
Yeah, that lead shuffled up a couple times in the last hour, actually. The 43 car got a drive-through. I believe it was just a drive-through penalty in the final hour. I think Nick Yellowly was driving at the time. So they got dropped back to second. The 48 VDS Panis Racing car picked up the lead. And then they ultimately lost it again to the 43. So it was sort of nobody wants to win here, but someone's got to do the honor of it. And the 43 was able to reclaim that spot.
43. I got to take my victory lap, actually, because 43 was my pick to win. So
did you? Well, you missed me earlier doing this when you're talking about the 83 car. My gut feeling all week.
Oh, who did you end up rolling with? Was it one?
I picked the 83.
Oh, you did pick the 83. Okay. All right. So we're off.
I'm pretend this is champagne. I'm just going to celebrate that all year.
There we go. Okay. So you got the top class. I got the LMP2s, and we didn't get the GT3.
GT3 is still a mixed bag.
Sorry?
GT3 is still a mixed bag.
Yeah. Should we talk about GT3s now?
Yeah, let's talk about GT3, I guess.
Actually, before we do, let's just mention the 199 AO by TF entry winning the LMP2 Pro Am.
Yeah, well, not only doing that, they also finished third overall. So
yes, a
I'm gonna
very
give them credit
good
on that
race,
too.
a very good race for them overall. A strong lineup, an LMP2 Pro Am lineup that consists of PJ Hyatt, Dane Cameron, and Louis Delatraz. Like that's pretty strong lineup. So good for them on Spike picking up the class win there and the overall class podium as well.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. GT3. I got a couple talking points here.
Yeah.
We're gonna start with the good or the bad here.
Let's start with the bad and go to the good.
Okay.
Get the bad news out of the way.
Well, I guess this isn't quite bad because it sort of got tied into a happier ending, I suppose. Corvette drivers were not silent this weekend about having, let's just say, problems with the top speed of their car, and just the raceability of that car. Well, the raceability of that car not really being there. Now, the happy ending for it is the 81 TF Sport Corvette was able to pick up a podium after all of that, which I was really surprised about. That was sort of one of those cars where it's like you haven't been paying attention for a little while. It's the early morning hours, and I look over, and the TF Sport Corvette's third. And I'm like, these guys were complaining the entire time. I thought they would have been running 13th and 17th. Yep. But no, they definitely were not shy about complaining about the balance of performance this weekend. Ben Keating was especially fired up this past weekend. He was furious after qualifying, didn't really get the lap in that he wanted to do there. He was fired up early in the race, talking about the lack of straight line speed that they had. And I'm trying to remember who Radio Le Mans interviewed toward the end of the race as well. Just looking through the driver lineup. Danny Juncadella, maybe. Actually, Danny Juncadella, I think earlier in the race was talking about it. Ben Keating certainly was. And then they also were interviewing the driver from AWA as well.
Matt Bell,
I think, is the one who was talking about it from their team. So all three of the,
maybe Matt
all
Bell.
three of the Corvettes, I think, had a driver at least mention that lack of top speed at least once during the Radio Le Mans transmission. So picked up on that. I don't know if there's a whole lot else to say about it, really. It's going to sort of tie into what we're going to talk about later here. If you do want to talk about sort of the more positive side here, there's a couple of positives that I took out of this race. Number one, it was the first points on the board for Mercedes. We're talking about that a lot this season. One of the Iron Links Mercedes is going to get on the board. It was here. They were able to do it. The 61 car was the one picking up points there. They finished 12th, but only the top 10 full season WEC entrants are picking up points there. They had a couple of the Le Mans only entries finish ahead of them. So they got bumped up and ended up getting 8 points, which is double points from where we usually are for this race. So they're on the board now.
That's certainly positive.
Yeah. And then also the Manti Porsches should have paid more attention to them as well, because they were very strong here last year, of course, winning here for the first race at Le Mans with the LMGT3 class. And then they backed that up this year with another win for the 92 car. A little bit of a different driver lineup in that car this year. In fact, a very different driver lineup from the one that won last year. But able to back that victory up for the Manti team here. And sort of a sleeper pick. I wasn't really looking at them much until we got into the race this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Kind of under the radar, a team that you probably just expected to be solid and probably in contention, but not really one that's, you're not necessarily going to pick them over some of the other lineups that we saw. So yeah, a really impressive run from Manti. I mean, with both of their cars finishing in the top 6, the sister 90 car finished in 6th. You also
Well,
had
they
some
had three
strong.
cars in this race, but
Pardon me. Oh
they
yeah,
had
they had.
that extra car in this race as well. Well, they had the
Yeah,
Iron Dames was the and the 90
yeah.
was the third car.
Yes. You're right. Sorry, you're right. Yes. Yeah, the Iron Dames didn't have a great run. They were not classified. Why weren't they No. Oh no, it's
No, they were
below
classified.
the cars below them that weren't classified. So
Right.
yeah, they uh, Iron Dames finished 7 laps off the pace, but uh, another entry. We talked about them in the lead up to the race that they looked strong. The Ferraris, the 21 Vista AF Corsa Ferrari finishing second, a strong run for them, and maybe ones that I think we really expected to be strong in this race were the Lexus, the
Yep.
Codis ASP,
Both of
both
our
of the
picks.
both of the Lexis. Yeah, both of our picks, so that's why they inevitably failed. And then the Mustangs as well. I was surprised by the lack of performance that we saw from the Mustangs in this race. The top finishing one was in ninth. The other one didn't finish. Yeah, the other one finished dead last
Yep.
after an early accident, if I remember right.
Yep.
So a little bit disappointing after I think they finished third and fourth here last year, I think. So a really
Yeah.
good race last year to a disappointing race this year. Bit surprising to see that. And I got to give a shout out to the hometown team, I guess, for me in this race, AWA. They picked up a top 10 finish, finishing in 10th. They kind of were hanging around in the top 10 the entire race. They faded a little bit, towards the end of this one, but a really strong showing for them, and gotta give them a shout out picking up that top 10.
Yeah, the standout one there off the ones you fired off to me is Lexus. Of
Yeah,
course, you and I both picked them, as I said. Um, After the test day last week, I really thought they were going to be the top team going into this. They looked like an early favorite. They really weren't as competitive in qualifying as I thought they would be.
yeah,
Um, I don't have the qualifying positions pulled up, but they were pretty much mid-pack.
yep,
In fact, I don't even think the 87 car made it through. No, the 87 didn't even make it through to Hyperpole. Um, so they were sort of off off what we thought they would be doing earlier on in the week.
yep,
We got into the race though, things sort of changed a little bit. The 78 car was the stronger of the two, I would say, in terms of pace. They were up running in podium contention for quite a while in the race. Ultimately, they crashed with about 5 hours left in the race, and the Porsche curves looked very similar actually to what the one of the 9X8, I believe, was in the 93 did earlier in the race,
yeah,
where they sort
yeah,
of ran wide and hit the wall. Of course, the Lexus ended up getting the worst of that.
yeah,
But yeah, Lexus to me, I really thought they were going to be stronger this weekend. They just didn't seem to have that ultimate pace though to compete with some of the other big names that we mentioned in there. I think Aston Martin was stronger than I expected them to be.
yep,
Porsche, of course, they were, as I said, that sleeper pick. They didn't qualify in the top three. In fact, looking at the list, they qualified fifth with a 92 car, but didn't make mistakes. And that's a big thing with the LMGT3 classes. There was quite a few cars in that class that either just ran into mechanical issues. A few of them crashed. And at the end, it didn't necessarily need to be the fastest car overall to pick up the win there.
yeah, yeah. I think nailed it there. This was a big step forward for Lexus, from last year to this year, and yeah, they did look strong, but all that progress is about to be thrown out the window, right? With the new car on the way, kind of going to be back to square one for them. So would have been nice to see Lexus, kind of put that look like that strong pace from earlier in the race week, and even the strong pace that they've shown in the WEC in general this year, and saw that translate into a really strong run here at Le Mans. But that might have to wait until next year when they have a new car to enter the mix.
Yep.
Also, I guess while you're talking about, since I think we're going to be moving on here, um, when you mentioned somebody that pleasantly surprised you, you mentioned Aston Martin, and you were
Mhm.
talking about in LMGT3 the Aston Martins, but I think the Valkyries also deserve a little bit of an applause as well. Both of
Sure.
them finished the race. I mean, that 18 of the 21 or 18 of the, I guess 19 of the 21 cars finished the race. Um, and didn't retire. There was just two Cadillacs that retired. Were both the Cadillacs retired with engine issues? I know Wayne Taylor Racing had an engine issue, but I don't remember
Yeah,
what the
and I know
311
the
was.
Wayland car did because it blew up right in front of me.
Okay, so engine issues for the Cadillacs, but the Aston Martins, the Valkyries, did not have engine issues. They were able to complete both those cars, completed all 24 hours, and yeah, solid showing for them. They do look like they could be laying like a solid foundation to build off of with that Valkyrie platform into the coming years. So hopefully they're able to keep that going through the end of this season and maybe see them be a little bit more competitive starting in 2026.
Yeah. Worth noting, this was their first 24-hour race with that car.
Yep.
Passed the test with flying color.
They've they've passed about every test that we've seen from them so far, as we have Chris that's paused here for a second. But he's back now. So but yeah, they've passed every test that they've had so far. You think back to Sebring and they were able to do the same thing there, just survive. And they've done a really good job of that in their races so far this year. So well done to Aston Martin.
Yeah, I was gonna say before my thing cut off. We saw a similar thing with Lamborghini last year,
Yeah.
where they were able to finish up the race, and that, to me, that's the main win when you're
Yep.
either a team or especially a new manufacturer in the class, is to be able to get that first 24-hour race completed here, is the main thing. You can walk out of
Yep.
that race with a ton of data off of both cars, and use that moving forward. Um, so yeah, good shout out there.
Yep.
All right, do I get to
It's
do
the
the
news
thing on?
stories, right?
Well, I got one
Oh,
more. I got
okay.
to fire off BOP here
Oh boy, yes.
because this is the most fun I'm gonna have all episode. Because I noticed a trend this week. Um, well, okay, let's be honest. I've noticed a trend for the last 5 years of the week preceding Le Mans, we will consistently get teams, team principals, drivers, manufacturers discussing BOP. Now, they don't do it as blatantly nowadays because they're not allowed to. The WEC rules will state that you will be fined if you go out and blatantly say, we think the BOP here is terrible.
You just got to
Luckily,
tiptoe around it a little bit.
yeah, I mean, you and I aren't on the payroll, so we can do it if we
I
want.
thank
But
heavens. Otherwise, I'd be bankrupt.
I don't think we complain about BOP quite as much as some other people. At
Yeah, that's
least
true.
check the social media comments on like Instagram. I think we're doing all right. Um, but something became obvious to me this week, which is that, okay, if we're going to continue doing this, if we're going to continue the cycle of we go into a 24 hours of Le Mans, we saw a lot of drivers, notably Corvette drivers were the main ones I noticed in GT3 talking about BOP. A lot of hypercar teams were doing the same as well. Bourdais, Toyota were making comments, and those were really the main ones I picked up on. I'm sure there were others that were going out throughout the week as well. We have a class right now. I'm talking specifically about hypercar here, that is built on a whole foundation of balance of performance. That's what they're using to lure the manufacturers in. And it's what they're trying to use to keep the manufacturers competing. Now, if you have manufacturers and teams that are insistently bringing up the bad sides of BOP, which is what we're seeing right now, are we going to reach a point where BOP is not keeping those manufacturers around, where it's actually sending them away? And if so, at what point do you have to sit back and say something needs to change here? Because right now, I'm seeing a lot of negative press about the balance of performance from teams and drivers and manufacturers, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of positive. So when do you get to switch that around? And the main thing to me is if everybody is seemingly negative about this right now, why do we have it? Like it's a question that should be easy to answer.
Well,
The PR answer to it is, oh, well, we have BOP because all of the manufacturers agreed to it, and that's why they're here in the first place.
mm-hmm.
But are they going to stick around if we don't see any improvement?
Yeah. It's not the board of directors, though, for Toyota that's complaining about BOP, right? Or the board of directors at Cadillac. It's the drivers on track who ultimately don't pay the.
Well, no, but so I was bringing this exact thing up though to friends this week. Trust me, I've had a lot of time of
yeah.
transportation. I've been sitting on trains. I've been driving in cars. I've had a lot of chat time this week, and ultimately, what it boils down to is these board of directors were convinced to join the class, because they were likely told, "Hey, this is a BOP formula. We go in here. We don't need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars developing the cars. We can go in if we're a little bit off pace. We're going to get a little bit of a bump up in performance that should bring us closer to the front, and we should be competing for overall wins." Now, I can tell you right now that what I've seen the last 2 years in the WEC is I have not seen probably even half of those manufacturers competing for overall wins.
Yeah.
And this is a double-sided coin for me because I will never be one to sit here and say BOP is the bane of all evil. It is the reason why X team is slow here. I see a lot of that going around. And I think back to the LMP2 example I said, it's a great example as to why it's not the be all end all here.
Yeah.
You have to look at the setup. You have to look at the drivers you have. And you have to look at how well the team is at adapting to the car that they're running. So there's plenty of factors at play, but as we've discussed before here, multitude, it's always used as a scapegoat. And it always will be, because at the end of the day, if you have something in the regulations that you can point at and say, this isn't our fault, what manufacturer is not going to do that? What team principal is not going to point at that and say, it's not my fault that the car wasn't performing at Le Mans. It's not my team's fault.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's, I don't know. Like, it's interesting for me being, so focused on what's going on in IMSA and then seeing how that contrasts with some of the stuff that goes on in the WEC surrounding BOP. Like, there's definitely teams, drivers that complain about BOP from one weekend to another, or you'll hear comments like, well, we just don't have the performance that we need in the car. Like, we just don't have the performance available to us to be competitive this weekend, which you can, a lot of times you can read between the lines pretty easily there, and it's the BOP is just not where we need it to be. But it usually seems to, I think that IMSA has done a pretty good job of, making adjustments to that. They made a recent adjustment going into Detroit after we saw, Porsches and the BMWs being really strong in the beginning of the season, and making those changes. But it is a different process still in the WEC, and you can argue which one's the better process or which one's not. But it's a difficult spot with BOP, right? Because we know that it's necessary. It's a reason why we have the numbers that we see on the grid today, right? If this was a non-BOP formula, we're not seeing 21 cars starting the in the hypercar class of the 24 Hours of Le Mans this year. Probably not.
absolutely not.
But then when you see the teams, the drivers, turning against the BOP, and we know how negative fans can already be when that BOP, that 3-letter word, is mentioned, whether it's in hypercar, whether it's in an IMSA class, whether it's in a GT3 class in Australia, for heaven's sakes. Like, we all know that dreaded 3-letter BOP word sends fans into, sometimes into their worst. And it can be really, it's difficult, because when the teams and the manufacturers, when it starts to be, that's all we hear about, that's all we've heard about, well, not all that we've heard about, but we've heard a lot about it heading into Le Mans, the biggest sports car race in the world for the last at least 2 seasons, probably even before that. But like, really, when this class is growing and supposed to be showcasing its best, and that just translates further down to the fans, when we're watching this, and your car doesn't do well, so it's immediately jumping to complain about BOP, and that's not what we want the sport to turn into. Now the question is, I guess, how do you fix that? The WEC, they already don't really allow the drivers and teams to complain about BOP, but there's a way around that, clearly. But yeah, I don't know. It's probably going to be something that we just continue to talk about until some sort of a solution is reached, right?
Well, here's where I'll tie it all together is, I think,
yeah,
this is something that, if this is a problem and manufacturers are actually this fed up with it, then there needs to be some sort of major reform here, because we're on our 3rd iteration right now in 3 years of the balance of performance. And I don't personally care how you spin it. Being on a 3rd iteration of the balance of performance regulations means to me that the first 2 weren't working.
Yep.
And so if you don't have that, I've said this exact thing before, but if you don't have a functional BOP regulation, you don't have the confidence in the manufacturers. If you don't have the confidence in the manufacturers, they're going to start to leave. So I personally would really like to see just something out there that is gaining that confidence from the manufacturers. I don't know what that comes in the form of. I wish I had the golden buzzer here and I could just tell you, here's the golden ticket, and just say, here's what you got to do to fix it. I don't have that. If
we did,
man. If somebody had a magic wand. Now here's the funny thing I noticed. I personally don't think what the fans think of this matters. Like, because the fans, I don't think, are going to be boycotting the race. I've never seen BOP get that bad where people are like, yeah, I'm not going. I worry about what the teams say and what the manufacturers think about it. But I did notice a trend, which was pretty funny to me, with the hypercar class, where if you look at, and again, this is social media comments, this is just me having fun at this point, but if you look at the comments after qualifying this year, they were very positive. We were like, oh, the cars are like really balanced right now. We got Cadillacs fighting up there with the Ferraris and the Toyotas, and Porsches in there, and Alpines up there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then look at the comments that we saw after the race.
Yeah.
Guess what didn't change between qualifying and the race?
Yep.
It's to me, it's always going to be that thing where you aren't satisfied with the race result. Here's what I'm going to blame. I, again, don't care if the fans do that. Doesn't really make a difference, I don't think, for the series. But once the manufacturers start getting involved with that, is when I start to notice and care more.
A big enough stink by the fans, though, and all it takes is one of these, a board member to see what everybody that's watching this racing product that they've invested so heavily in, and if they get a bad taste in their mouth, then it could influence it in a way. But I know what you're saying. Once the teams and the manufacturers, not the board members but the manufacturers themselves are complaining, then we're getting in trouble. But it's probably enough BOP talk, isn't it? I know Cam wants us to find other good things about the sport to talk about. Everything sucks, Cam. Everything sucks.
I mean, I'll tell you what's good about the sport is the number I heard coming out of Le Mans was 340,000 people, which would be another bump up from what we've seen in 2024 last year. And then that in itself was a bump up of what we saw in 2023, which itself was already a record recorded attendance. So that's my positive is you go to the track right now. And it's not just over in the WEC. We've been talking about the record crowds that IMSA is seeing right now as well, at least the record recorded crowds. And they're way up right now. So get fans into the sport, and then once they're invested, they'll start complaining about BOP like the rest of us.
Exactly.
And join the party.
And we'll get 340,000 people watching us every week, right? That's how this works.
Yeah. Or 340,000 people complaining about BOP. So,
all right.
Yeah, we do have some news. I know you tried to steer that earlier, and then I decided to go on my doom arc.
We derailed
of getting that out there, but I thought that was worth noting because it was brought up a lot this week. It's brought up a lot every year at Le Mans, and it's going to continue every year. Let's put it that way, unless some significant changes is made. So we'll see. It's in the ball's in your court now. Let's see what happens.
I'm making the BOP. I like. No,
not you.
Okay. I promise it will get better, guys. I promise.
We're gonna. Hey, listen. Gonna put you in a room, and we're not gonna get let out until we have every single car within 100th of a second. All right. At the finish of the race, I want a 21 wide finish.
Sounds like jury duty.
Not that again. 2026 WEC calendar. We can discuss here as well. Of course, we had a lot of things come out of the ACO press conference this year. As we always do. You want to talk about positive news here?
Yeah, true.
There were 3 manufacturers that we got news from this week at the ACO press conference. And that's one of those moments where you got to, for Hypercar. And that's one of those moments where you got to pinch yourself and be like, holy crap, we have 3 manufacturers that are all talking about their new cars all at once. This is absolutely unheard of 10 years ago when we really had 3 competitive manufacturers, period. To me, I saw that and I was like, what? Sometimes you got to remember what era we're in right now. And when I saw people saying that this year's race was a bad race, I was like, ooh, you haven't been watching for too long then. Because I'll tell you, I watched some pretty rough years of the 24 hours of Le Mans, and this certainly was not one of them.
That's important to actually. That's a really good thing to remember and put this race in perspective.
Yeah. Go back 5 years and come back to me. But let's talk about the 2026 calendar. There's not a whole lot to discuss here because there really aren't any changes for the most part. Still seeing that season opener at Qatar, same distance, 18-12 kilometers / 10 hours. Following that up with Imola. They don't have F1 anymore, but you will be able to see the World Endurance Championship there. So I suppose the WEC now might be the headliner event for Imola, maybe.
Yeah, I think
which would be great.
That's also still conflicting with is it Laguna Seca?
I was going to get to this in a minute, but
okay.
We'll get the
true. We're on positive. We're on positive stuff right now, right? So
going to Belgium for Spa, of course, the pre-Le Mans race after that early May, and then big one, 24 hours of Le Mans around its same traditional date in the middle of June. Brazil, Coda, Fuji, and season finale at Bahrain. So no changes there. We do, of course, have those schedule conflicts. There are, I believe, 3 that are worth noting right now with IMSA. The official test session for the WEC, the prologue, as it's known, the week before the opening race of the season, will be conflicting, unfortunately, with the 12 hours of Sebring. I don't know.
I don't know if it's a direct conflict. I feel like the 12 hours of Sebring ends and then the day after the prologue starts, doesn't it?
Oh, because the prologue Sunday, Monday? I have the dates. It's the 22nd and 23rd. And Sebring is the 21st, which would be a Saturday. So 22nd, that'd be Sunday, Monday. I do wonder if it'll at all affect drivers getting over to Qatar. But at least something that I wanted to note. It's not going to have as big an effect as the direct race clashes. But had to get it out there, I guess. You were sort of about to mention that Imola is clashing with the IMSA race over at Long Beach next year.
Oh, is it? It's Long Beach. Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit different. It was
Laguna last year, or was it Laguna and Spa?
Spa and Laguna Seca were the ones that clashed this year, and then of course Mo Sport with Brazil, which we're still going to have that same clash next year as well. So that's the other one worth noting. So there's really 3 in there. The Qatar Prologue might really not be a big deal, but the other 2, of course, we're going to be working with. That's year 3 now of schedule conflicts between the 2 championships. We haven't really seen a whole lot of improvement there, unfortunately. And I know you, for one, you're probably already fired up about schedule conflicts after what was announced last week. So let's get some of your thoughts on that.
I mean, my thought is just one word, and that's convergence.
I knew it.
What, guys? Convergence. This was the buzzword that everybody was being sold on. The championships got together and they're like, all right, what's the buzzword that we're going to sell all of our fans on? Like, this is the reason why we're doing this. We're selling them on convergence. The 2 championships are coming together, and we're going to have this great era of convergence. And what have we seen play out? It's just been conflict after conflict. Multiple races of conflict a year. Like, man, this isn't even putting in other championships and other big races and the conflicts that they have. So yeah, that's tough. I don't know. It's I don't know really what to say. I think at this point it's like we just have to expect them to happen. And it really sucks because we're also seeing lots of manufacturers, really not like they're clearly choosing one championship over the other. The one championship being the WEC, generally speaking, over IMSA. I know there's a lot of them that have announced interest in racing in the WeatherTech Championship, like McLaren, said that they still intend to look at it after they've started up in the WEC. I think we probably safely expect Ford as well, but this era of convergence and how we've seen it play out so far, I don't think is necessarily all that it was hyped up to be in the beginning, with all of these conflicts and everything like that. So that definitely sucks. But an unchanged schedule is also good for fans, especially fans that are newer to the sport, having the consistency from one year to another. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, type thing with the schedule, which I don't think anybody really has any huge complaints about generally, like the tracks that we're going to visit. I know there's a lot of fans that are looking to see, Silverstone be added to the grid, and we're going to have to wait another year to see if that's something that happens. But yeah, I mean, good that we have the calendar confirmed, but I guess I just shouldn't be upset at this point. I should just expect that we're going to have conflicts.
Maybe if we make a prediction about it, that there's going to be schedule clashes.
Good call. We can we can be the change that we want to see.
Putting it on my calendar right now.
Yep.
For next,
set a reminder
next year. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say, keep it simple. I echo pretty much everything you said there. To me, the one race that we're missing here on the WC calendar is Silverstone. Said it before. Especially now that you have Aston Martin in the top class, you have McLaren joining in a couple of years. To me, that's a no-brainer race you need to get on the schedule.
Does this mean we're going to head to downtown Detroit with the WEC before too long because of Ford?
I ain't holding out hope, Steve.
Let's go to Michigan. Michigan International
No,
Speedway.
It's not happening, Stu.
Let's do an oval.
Maybe Daytona.
Yeah,
it's not happening either.
I don't think they're gonna. I don't know if they let that happen.
No. But apart from that, yeah, with the schedule clashes, I mean, I'm look. Let's keep it honest here. These aren't blatant schedule clashes. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes where, Imola and Brazil, how tight their scheduling is, or likewise with, I mean, I guess IMSA's with the Long Beach Grand Prix is going to be probably the worst one because you have to work around with IndyCar on that one. So I don't see that one being easy to move. And then Mosport, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, that one doesn't really make sense why that's a conflict, but
I don't know. We've said everything we need to say about that in the past already, the past 2 years now. So I'll move it on to some of the details we got also from that same
back to positive
time. Yeah, of course, we're going to spin it back. McLaren and Ford, as I sort of hinted at, were both present there to provide more details about their upcoming hypercar programs. McLaren gave us the car. They put it out as a show car and race morning. Fans, including myself, got to go see what it looked like. I'm sure you saw pictures online of it. What are you thinking? What do you think?
So you really want me to say what I think of it?
Of course. That's why
I think this is the most disappointing reveal for one of these cars that we've seen. I looked at it, and the first thing that came to mind is like, I don't know, it just reminds me of a really bland like LMP2 look. I don't really know how to describe it. Like, it just doesn't. It's a big nothing burger for me, really. Like, I don't see, apart from the papaya, it's Scrim in the chat said it's the McLaren is the world's first ugly hypercar, and I honestly think I would personally tend to agree with that. Like, I'm not really seeing the the styling cues that we're getting from other manufacturers. Like, the Ferrari looks like it has that Ferrari look to it. I know that's a hypercar, not an LMDH like the McLaren is. But if you want to look at the LMDHs, like BMW and the grill is there. Cadillac has the vertical lights. Porsche and the lights there, like, they all have these really distinct styling cues that makes them unique. And the McLaren is like, maybe it's going to have that uniqueness when the headlights are on and you can really clearly see like those McLaren headlights. But again, apart from the papaya, I'm not looking at that and immediately going, oh, that's a McLaren. And I think that's a bit of a failure on McLaren's part if they're not making it where you immediately look at it in the LMDH, LMH era, and you're not immediately saying, oh, that's a McLaren. But I don't know. Did you have a different thought than that? Did it look any better in person?
That's where I was going, actually. This is one of those cars that I do think it looks better in person. Of course, we haven't seen it on track. We haven't seen it with an official livery. I'm going to agree with you, just to keep it simple. I think it does look pretty generic. It's like the Hot Wheels generic LMDH car. But overall, I do think it looked better in person when I actually got to, because I saw it and then saw it in person like 3 hours later. There's a very small turnaround time between seeing the rendering and then actually getting a chance to see it. Taking a lot of inspiration from like what Ferrari and even Genesis are doing with that dorsal fin, sort of that stepped up dorsal fin on the back of the car. The front of the car, I do see some McLaren styling, especially sort of in the headlight areas. Really, the car that stood out to me was the McLaren Senna. I don't know if you remember that car, sort of their track focused, track day beast car. Saw some of that in the front of that car, which, to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of the way that car looked either. So maybe that's all connected. But I don't know. We got other details about it though. It will be unfortunately not extremely exciting details either. God, I don't want to rip on. We're talking about McLaren here joining a
Yeah,
prototype. Like
we were so excited like 6 months ago, and now
complaining
it's like,
about
oh,
this is
boo,
just
McLaren.
complaining about this is the stupidest thing we've done all year. Like
It is. It
you've got the
is.
team that's leading the F1 championship right now. They're joining prototype racing. We're like, car doesn't look great.
Willingly going prototype racing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, McLaren. I'm really happy that you're joining. But it's going to be powered by a twin turbo V6 as well. It was sort of mentioned that they'd be collaborating with somebody else on that engine, but we didn't get any hint as to who that would be. So no, it does not have the, what was the name of that not the concept car, the GT car that had the V10, the Judd V10 that they like put in that teaser clip, doesn't have that engine, unfortunately. Although I go to hell with your looks if you know, if you had a V10 in the car. I don't care what
Yes.
the car looks like. Anyway, get back on the rails here. That's it. It's a twin turbo V6, which is what most people are running in the ranks right now in LMDH and Hypercar.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we poo-pooed on it a lot here, but you know, McLaren, they're going to be able to compete for the big the racing, like what is it, the three crown jewels in the same year. They're going to be able to, the Triple Crown, that's what I was looking for. They're going to be able to win. They're going to be competing in all three of them. It's been a while since we could say that. So that's exciting in and of itself. So let's see what it looks like on the track. I know a lot of people in the chat were saying, wait until we get a livery, and there's a lot of comments about that too. So let's see what this looks like, and then maybe we'll make a better and more informed decision. But exciting to get these details emerge. Like, there was a lot of hype in the lead up to Le Mans with these announcements. And another one that we haven't talked about yet was Ford, and Ford made some announcements as well, right?
Yeah. So a couple of things I had to get off before we jump off McLaren.
Okay.
And either you cut off there or I cut off. I'm just trying to think of which one's going to actually go through in the final recording. So if there's any extended pause, apologies. We'll be back to normal next week. Didn't mention that this McLaren is partnering with Dallara on this chassis. It's a Dallara LMDH chassis, so similar to what exact same as what Cadillac and BMW are running. So if you see any design similarities, particularly like in the back of the car where we don't usually see manufacturer styling quite as much, then there you go. And then also on the comment of looks, for the record, I thought the Ferrari 499P did not look good until I saw a livery on it. So,
okay,
I'm going to wait until we see a proper racing livery, and then I'll change my mind, maybe.
And you know what? If a car is ugly but it goes fast and it wins races,
that's all that matters.
That's all that matters. Yep.
Yeah. Ford, though, you were talking about that as well. We didn't get quite as much out of Ford this weekend. We did not get a test mule show car out that was unwrapped in a giant display box with a ribbon on top. We did get confirmation that they'll be running an Orca chassis with that car. So to me, that screams that Ford is they're shooting for the top here. They're going with the I'd say arguably the best chassis manufacturer you could probably pick from. Of course, we're seeing Acura and Alpine run Orca chassis right now as well. So I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot else that came out of the Ford announcement this weekend, just that they will be confirmed with Orca. And I believe it was confirmed at some point in the past that car is going to be running a V8, I think. But
but I don't think we got
on that note this weekend.
I don't think we got real confirmation on what V8, right?
Right.
Because there's a lot of people.
It just sounds familiar that we heard that in the past.
Yeah. And then there was a little bit about Genesis too, right?
Yeah,
not
Genesis.
as
Well, the thing with
groundbreaking.
Genesis is Genesis. Yeah, they've already given us a lot more details with their program
Yeah.
than we had from the other two. We've already seen their car. They showed pictures of it in December. They showed the actual car in person at the New York Auto Show this year. They have that engine on the dyno. They're doing testing with that. Expect on track testing with that to start probably this summer over in Paul Ricard, which is where they're setting up shop for that program. But no, apart from that, no groundbreaking announcements from Genesis this weekend. But they were present. Of course, they were there with the EDEX Sport team over in the LMP2 class as well. So to get some of their development drivers, some seat time at Le Mans, where they're contesting the full European Le Mans series this year as well. So great to see them present this weekend, of course.
Yeah, unfortunately, they didn't have a great result at Le Mans, but we're there and got some more experience under their belt for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
We got
I guess one last piece of news, and it is about LMP2. I know it's not super relevant for the WEC.
Oh yes, how can I forget this?
But it is relevant for at least IMSA. It has been announced the two suppliers that won, I guess, the tenders for the next generation of LMP2 car. Orica is, of course, one of them, to nobody's surprise, and the other one was the other one Dallara, or no, Ligier. It was Ligier.
Yeah.
Ligier is the other chassis option that will be for sale, and Gibson engine supplier. No real surprise there. So that was confirmed in the lead up to Le Mans as well. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more variety in LMP2 in the upcoming years when the second generation gets rolled out. And it's not just the spec Orica class anymore, but time will tell.
Well, that's the hope, at least.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the hope. Is there anything else from Le Mans, or should we do a quick Watkins Glen rundown?
Well, I'll give you the 30-second summary of Le Mans. If you're tuning in later into the episode, I thought the race was to sum it up in a phrase, I thought it was a very good endurance race. And every word of that is literal. This was an endurance race, very little interruption to what we saw. I think, as I said earlier in the show, it was a lot less controversial than we saw previously. The crepes at the track are still very good, in my opinion, at least. They were hitting hard at 8 o'clock in the morning after I was running on very little sleep. The weather was really good at the track this year. It was not too hot. It wasn't too cold. Got a little brisk at night, but we survived. And going to Mulsanne Corner was a mistake at night because there was a massive traffic jam that was caused by people flooding into the campsite. And it took us about an hour and a half to go from Mulsanne Corner to Arnage. So that's it. Those are my thoughts from Le Mans this year.
Fun. That it was still overall a good experience, though, right?
Yeah. I can segue this for you, though, because you're going to be camping this weekend at the 6 Hours of the Glen.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There we go.
I know where you're transitioning with this.
Take it away.
You're just setting me up with an easy one, right? So
I'm throwing you a fastball.
Yeah, throw me the softball. I may have had a swing and a miss at the first one, but I'm not going to let strike two go by me. So we'll jump to that Watkins Glen talk. And yes, I will be camping trackside at Watkins Glen. So let's talk a little bit about Watkins Glen quickly. I know we're an hour and 20 minutes into the show, but we can do a quick Watkins Glen rundown. So we're back to the Endurance Cup rounds on the IMSA calendar. It's been since March at the 12 Hours of Sebring that we've had just Sprint Cup races in that time. So few notable things to about that return to the Endurance Cup calendar. One of them is the return of LMP2s. I think the LMP2s get around Watkins Glen really, really well. They put on a good show here in recent years. We're not going to see them get the attention that they deserve on the broadcast. But I think it's definitely something that, fans, if you're watching at home, watching along on your live timing, then you want to keep an eye on the LMP2 class and some of the racing that we're going to see there. We also have a very strong grid for Watkins Glen. It was initially announced as 56 entries, which is a very strong number. Regardless, it's an increase of 2 GTP class cars from the number that we had in this race last year, which you always love to see, an increase in that class. But we are going to be down to 55 entries now for race day, as kind of an incident that happened at Le Mans is affecting this race. The Iron Dames had to withdraw today. And the number 83 Porsche, Michelle Gadding, during doing some pit stop practice in the lead up to the 24 hours of Le Mans, broke her foot, I believe it was. So she is absent for this race in Watkins Glen. A little bit disappointing that we couldn't see one of the other, Iron Dames drivers, be able to come over and compete at Watkins Glen. But we do know as well, the Nürburgring 24 is also going on this weekend. So I didn't look to see if maybe there was some of the other drivers were competing in that. But regardless, disappointing that we're not going to have the Iron Dames on the grid. They're definitely fan favorites, wherever they go. So hopefully we'll see Michelle back for the final 2 Endurance Cup rounds of the season, with the next one after this being at Indianapolis. What to watch for, where we always got to look at the weather heading into Watkins Glen. We're going to see a little bit of everything. We always see a little bit of everything, whether it's really hot temperatures. We see lots of rain. We see storms roll through. We've had red flags impact the running in multiple races in recent years. So the weather is always going to be one to watch out for. This year's no different. There's a chance of showers each of the 4 days of running. It does gradually get lower towards race day. And kind of coinciding with that is the temperature also increases across the week. So looks like we're just going to be another typical Watkins Glen race weekend, where the weather may be a little bit unpredictable, but also classic summer conditions. Really good sort of kickoff to the summer IMSA kind of schedule here. I know we talked about a lot of BOP earlier in the episode in the WEC. A quick note on BOP here. IMSA made some adjustments on how they're displaying the BOP in their technical releases, which I thought was really interesting. So it took a little bit of extra work to dig through and find out what the actual differences are. There are very few differences in the GTP class on the power levels. There was a big difference heading into Detroit, and lots of those have remained relatively consistent. A couple of things to note: the Acura and the BMW are going to be a little bit heavier. The Cadillac is really the only car that gains a noticeable amount of power. They gain 2.1%. They have 2.1% more power in the first stage of power, which is under 230 kilometers an hour. So they're going to have a little bit more power coming out of the corners. So that's going to help them. And then at max speeds, the Lamborghini and the Acura are both bumped up to max power, which is they were sitting not significantly below max power, but they were sitting below max power before. So a couple of notable changes there on the GTP balance of performance. What that's going to translate to at Watkins Glen, anyone, your guess is as good as mine. We've seen so many BOP changes in recent weeks in the IMSA side to try and level things out a little bit more. And I think it's going to be exciting to watch. We're going to have 6 manufacturers at the Glen, same as what we had in Sebring. So I think we're going to be in for some good racing there. But apart from that note on the Iron Dames withdrawing, there's really not many other huge stories kicking around right now. I think we might hear some more we might get some more news dropped in the lead up to the race. But yeah, 6 hours of the Glen right around the corner, and definitely, I mean, I'm biased because I'll be at the track, but one of my favorite races of the year. So, yeah.
I got a piece here that might have slipped under your radar. The return of Magnus in GTD.
Yes. Yep.
I don't
that was a
believe you
surprise. You're
mentioned
right.
that.
I did not.
Um,
I did not mention that. You're right.
they announced on social media that they have new sponsorship. Sort of trying to keep that a secret. Unfortunately for them, IMSA posted the entry list, which lists all the sponsors. It appears that they'll be sponsored by Virtual Energy. So I'm not too sure what that is, but I'll have to look into it.
Well, it's Virtual Energy.
Well, there you go.
My phone has Virtual Energy in it.
The cars have Virtual Energy.
Cars have Virtual Energy in them.
But yeah, we'll be seeing the return from them after they announced a pause after the Rolex 24 this year.
Long-lived pause.
Yeah, well, as they usually are in sports car racing, they're either permanent or like 3 months.
They literally missed Sebring because they would have been a Michelin Endurance Cup only team, and they missed one race. So
yeah. So the other major story for me, I guess the main thing I'm looking at in the GTP category, well, there's two things really. We're going to look at Porsche's form. They're going to want to rebound strong after Le Mans. I think the drivers, even though there's not some of those. Actually, no, because I'm looking now at Tandy and Nazar. And, okay. So a lot of those drivers are racing at Le Mans for Porsche.
Yeah.
I was going to say not a lot of crossover, but that's not true at all. They're going to, especially the drivers from the 6 car at Le Mans, are going to want to get back on form quickly here. I think they were very disappointed to lose that one this past weekend. And of course, they've been so strong in IMSA this year. So that's going to be one of the ones I'm looking out for, seeing if they can rebound after that first loss of the season in Detroit. But even more than that for me, I'd say would be Lamborghini. We talked a couple episodes ago about how they need to find form and they need to find it fast if they want any chance at convincing customers to invest in the car for next year, which really sounds like it's the only way forward with that program. Watkins Glen, I think, is going to be a huge deal for them. If they're not able to find a surprise race win, getting on.
Nope. We got Chris paused at an opportune point here. See if he comes back, but he's back. He's back. Oh no, but now we don't hear him. You're back. You're fully back now. Okay.
Great. I love doing remote shows. They're great. A remote show with technical difficulties is perhaps better than no show at all, I guess. At least when we have this much to talk about. How much did you hear me say about Lamborghini?
You're saying Lamborghini needs to pull off a surprise victory here.
Well, I said it'd be extremely surprising, but very big for them if they did. I think a podium would also be very helpful.
Heck, just finishing a race at this point would be big for that program to get something moving in the right direction.
That brings the other side of it, though, is what if they don't do well here? That's really what I'm going to be looking at, is if they don't do well here, then that's you're running out of chances, because you have Indianapolis after that, and then you have Petit Le Mans. So,
and those are late in the season.
Yeah. And that late in the season, is it too late to try to convince a customer to maybe run the car next year? I think so. I think this is a huge race for them.
Yeah, because this is, I mean, a top flight prototype program is a lot different than, say, like the situation that we've seen unfold with, say, Pfaff Motorsports last year, where they picked up that Lamborghini program like super last minute, very last minute. Like they came out of Petit Le Mans with still uncertainty as to what their 2025, or if there was going to be a 2025 season for them. This isn't this isn't. I mean, I guess you could argue that Riley was kind of in the same boat. They kind of got that program plopped on them at the last second, but like, that's not going to fly really with a customer. If a customer is going to be, buying these cars and running them, it's unlikely that is going to be the case this year, where we get last minute stuff like that. So you're absolutely right that this race, especially at Watkins Glen, is big to show something. If it's a top 5 run, that's going to go a long way for them. I said finishing the race, you're probably right that it actually needs to show something at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And if because the clock is ticking, clock is absolutely ticking. We are just about 6 months away from the Rolex 24, so which is wild to think. But yeah,
Gotta book my flights.
yeah, book your accommodations, folks.
Yeah. That's I don't think I had anything else to add on to that really. But
No.
anything else for the Glen that
Well, we
you
got to make
wanted
our
to
picks,
throw on?
right?
Oh,
Definitely something that you
man.
weren't thinking of.
I definitely wasn't because I didn't even think of anybody. But you want to help me out here and lead off first?
Okay, I can. I'll kick it off. I'll lead off here and I'll stall a little bit for you because when I
I'm
was
gonna
thinking
fire him on the
about
spot. It's fine.
yeah, put you on the spot. Yeah, and everybody in the chat as well. We want to hear who your picks are, and we want to know if are we crazy in who we're thinking, and then you can come back and tell us next week whether you thought our picks were right or if we were way off, and you can give us heck for that. But for GTP, I don't know. I said at the beginning of this year that I was gonna make safe picks, and I feel like I'm going away from that a little bit here. But I do have a genuinely good feeling about Cadillac this weekend. I think that what we've seen unfold starting at Detroit with the big change in BOP, I think that brought the field that it's shaken up the field a little bit. And we know that, Wayne Taylor Racing, they're starting to get their feet under them a little bit more with that Cadillac program. We saw them with a big breakthrough second place performance at Detroit. And, even though that they got that track position from a really good strategy play, they had the pace to stay there. So this has been a track that Cadillac has been solid at the past 2 years. They finished second in this race the past 2 years. So I'm going to go with the number 40 Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac to grab the win here. A little bit of a risky play, but I'm feeling good about the Cadillacs this weekend.
Yeah, well, at least one of the Cadillacs, strong last race out at Detroit, definitely due up on some success with that program in both championships at this point. I was definitely thinking of them as well. I'm going to go a little bit different, though. I'm going to say, let's finish the job here with the 24 BMW. They've been way too strong this year to not have any race wins yet. Detroit, they weren't sort of on the same form that we saw from them earlier in the season. They broke that pole streak that they had going there, unfortunately. This is a team that, by a technicality, won this race back in 2023. But let's not dismiss that they were strong there nonetheless. They had to be in second place to pick up that race win. So I'm going to go with BMW.
And they were right in the running and the final 15 minutes of that race too. It was a good battle at the end.
That's what I'm going for here is they were strong. But I can't remember how they did here last year, but
I don't remember either. They didn't finish first. They didn't finish second. I don't remember.
But last year was also like a real mixed bag because of the weather.
Yeah, we had all that rain. Yeah,
it's tricky to. But yeah, I'm going to go with the 24 BMW specifically.
It's a good pick. It's a good pick. BMW, yeah, looked strong. Aaron's saying the curse of being picked to win by Stu. They will now finish last. That's good. That's good. I made some good picks this year. So, Aaron, how'd your Le Mans
got one right at Le Mans? I don't think Aaron got any, so I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, he had like Cadillac, Corvette, and all that they did was complain all week. So, all right, should we go LMP2? Are you ready to make an LMP2 pick, or shall I go first as well?
Yeah, I'll have some fun with it, to be honest with you. I don't know, it's a little too cheesy, but I'm just going to go with the 43 Inter Europol. Like I'm talking earlier in the episode about how strong they were. Of course, they're just coming off a win at Le Mans. They won the last IMSA race they competed in Sebring. and they were the champions last year. So, 43.
Tom Dillman is going to be sticking in that car from Le Mans as well. So, we got some AO fans in the chat. Cam is looking at AO, although I don't know if he's saying in LMP2 or if he's saying, but
either one I think is honestly a strong pick.
I think you're probably right. For me, I think that the 74 Riley is the winner here in LMP2. They won 3 years in a row when they competed in LMP3. They finished second here last year in their first year running here in the LMP2 class. They're currently sitting second in the championship, or are they leading the championship? They're on a strong run. They're leading the championship by 2 points right now. So they have yet to break through with that big LMP2 win. They didn't pick up a win last year. I think this is when they break through with a big LMP2 win. Give me the 74 Riley.
Okay, I'll take it. Over in
GTD Pro.
I was trying to remember the class name because I've been spending way too much time around LMGT3.
LMGT3 Pro.
Sure. I'll let you go first, I suppose.
Okay. Easy one for me as well in GTD. There's a manufacturer that has been strong here with multiple iterations of the car through to what's now an Evo. We've seen them pick up wins in, I think they won. No, it was RLL that won a couple of years ago, I think. But the number one, Paul Miller Racing, BMW. Did I specify the number one? That's Madison Snow, Neil Verhagen, and it's a TBD driver. So it sounds like they're maybe using a third driver, which is not the norm. They'd be the only one in GTD Pro that'd be using a third driver. But give me the number one, Paul Miller Racing, BMW to win in GTD Pro.
Okay. I was definitely thinking of that one. But it wasn't the one I ultimately looked at last, which...
Well, we could fully sync BMW here if you want to pick
I'm not syncing BMW. I'm going with a little bit of an interesting one. I'm going with Dragon Speed.
Okay.
In the 296 GT3. That would be the first win for Dragon Speed with that car in that class. But of course, we have Risi Competizione helping out with this car. Started on pole last year, if I'm not mistaken. Risi did.
I don't know. I don't remember if Risi did, to be honest.
It was either last year or 23, I believe.
Again, that qualifying session last year was right around when the rain was starting. There was weather; it was weather-affected session, so maybe take it with a grain of salt. But Ferrari has been strong around the Glen with the 296.
Yeah. And strong in endurance races as well over in IMSA. Of course, they won Rolex 24 last year in the hands of Risi. But we haven't seen that success out of Dragon Speed yet. I'm just going to go with them. If shouldn't be a surprise completely knowing that I forgot we were even doing picks. So I'm making all of these up on the spot. But you got Albert Costa and Davide Rigon in that car. Both very capable drivers in the hands of that Ferrari. So
that's a
good
pick. That's a good pick. Yeah, like I said, Ferrari's been good here in recent years, and Dragon Speed themselves. They won pole at Laguna Seca, finished second in the race. Was it second? I think it was second. Had a strong run at Laguna Seca regardless. So Dragon Speed's looking solid here. Who do you got in GTD?
Who do I have in GTD? I suppose you're probably going to pick one of the Lexuses, aren't you?
Well, there's only one Lexi in GTD.
Oh well, sorry, yeah.
And I'm not. I
was thinking between both GTD classes. Yeah, so I was thinking you were going to pick the 12 in GTD for sure.
Lexus is a solid pick here. They swept the GTD Pro and GTD classes here 2 years ago, I think it was. So they're strong around here.
Yeah, but I'm not going to go with Lexus. I'm going to go with Harder Racing. Why not? It's the other old reliable here.
Yep.
But they Were they the team that picked up the scraps at the end of last year? After
I think it was
again,
Heart of
I'm mixing
Racing.
up 23 and 24, but what was the race where everybody was running out of fuel in the end?
Wasn't that
In
an
G-
LMP2?
oh, sorry, that was in GTD Pro, not
Yeah, well,
GTD.
GTA Pro, the Heart of Racing did win in GTA Pro last year. It
Yeah,
was Ross
so that's
Gunn
what I'm
and
thinking of.
Alex
Yeah,
Rivera that won.
that's what I'm thinking of. Then
Windward won in GTD last year.
it's 12:30 in the morning. It's 12:50 in the morning, Stu.
Yeah. That's fair enough. You still made a good pick. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of like a crutch pick with the Heart of Racing, but I'll let you have.
Don't
that.
follow it up with Lexus then.
If I was making it, I'm not following it up with Lexus. Don't worry. I'm definitely going for a different one here. It's a car that has shown glimpses of really good pace in IMSA since they've joined the championship. And I think that the Porsche is going to get around well at Laguna Seca as well. So give me the 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche. Adam Adelson, Elliott Skier, Tom Sargent. Solid lineup here in GTD. Again, all of these GTD entries have to have 3 driver lineups, along with LMP2. The 2 pro classes do not. Give me the 120 Porsche here. I have a good feeling about them this weekend. They've shown some solid pace. I guess this season and last, and I think they'll get on well here at Watkins Glen.
Cool. Don't have anything else to add, I don't think, on those. I'm going to quickly just rapid fire get to some of the questions that were asked in the episode before I wrap things up here. Like I said, we're approaching 1 a.m. where I am, so I gotta drive to the Nürburgring tomorrow.
I gotta pack.
I've had worse days. And yeah, you gotta get on some things yourself there. So
yeah, we're both doing some driving tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah. There was a question I saw earlier.
Hi, we have you and Wayne joining us in the chat.
What's that?
We have you and Wayne joining us in the chat.
Oh,
incredible timing.
Look, this is what happens.
Oh, this is what happens. We lose Chris now. We have him freeze out from the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi in at his Airbnb are going to sleep, but we have him moving now. He's a live person again.
We're good.
Okay.
There was a question that I lost now because I've scrolled around and I shouldn't do that.
Was it about ALMS, Asian Le Mans Series? Because I got
there was a question. I might just be missing some of the things in the chat from earlier on because I can't find some of them. There was a question though about the Asian Le Mans Series Hypercar introduction, specifically about, I think it was about the bronze driver requirement for that class. And I think where they were going with it is who is going to fill those cars? Is that like boutique manufacturers? Are we looking at like Vanwall, or are we looking at customer cars like Proton running the 963? And it really, is there any interest in that? To keep it simple, I am fairly certain they wouldn't introduce that class if they didn't have pretty much commitment already from certain teams to say, yeah, we'll do this if you go ahead with it. So I definitely think that's already been sort of under the table discussed with some teams already. The bronze driver requirement is one that I'm very interested in because we've only had one bronze driver in history race these new top class prototypes. It was Ben Keating back. Yeah, Ben Keating back at the 2023 or 4 Rolex 24. 4.
It was last year's,
And Ben Keating, a great bronze driver, has a ton of success over in LMP2 and the GT ranks. But I do think he struggled in that car when he was running at Daytona. He was certainly not up to the same pace level as most of the other drivers there. So I am interested how that's going to work out. I personally don't really understand it, to be honest with you. I don't really know why we're doing Pro-Am. But again, if this was something that was already discussed under the table with other teams, then maybe that's something that was factored as well. I'm sure it would be, but we'll see how it ends up, I suppose.
You might be able to make the argument that like of the championships that we do have these LMDH, LMH cars competing in, like the Asian Le Mans series would probably be the most cost effective championship to introduce these for, which is going to be big for, you know, if you're having that bronze driver sort of requirement. Like we know I'm pretty sure lots of the Asian Le Mans series weekends have multiple races on them, like a Saturday race and then a Sunday race, I think. Like they have double header weekends. Yeah. So so that makes things a lot more cost effective. It's in a pretty confined region, you know, like they're racing a fair bit across the Middle East. So that helps reduce some of the, you know, shipping costs, hopefully for a lot of these cars. And then just with it being a shorter championship as well, not as many race weekends. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we're not going to dig really deep into, you know, the details of it, but it is good to see that we're going to get, you know, another class, another championship that these cars are going to be eligible to compete in. And I assume that we're probably going to get the winner of this series get an invite to Le Mans. So
yeah,
will they be competitive with a bronze driver? Probably not. But
well, are they going to race at Le Mans with a bronze driver? I don't think so.
Well, I mean, but if you have a bronze driver that's pumping the support into that team to be able to run it, I think you kind of have to bring them to Le Mans, right?
I mean, it depends what team you are. I mean, if you're a Proton, then I wouldn't think so. Look, I mean, here's what I'll say about the whole thing right now. I think it makes sense to introduce the hypercar class somewhere else, because I think the issue with the World Endurance Championship, as we've said before, is they're running out of space, and they're getting 3 new manufacturers in the hypercar class over the next couple seasons. I don't see support dwindling out for the LMGT3 class. They've already cut LMP2. They're trying to bump the grid space up to 40 from, well, I guess they already, I think, did, or they might have bumped it up to like 38 or something. But I know they're trying to go to 40 if they haven't already, even though we're not actually at that many cars in the championship right now. We certainly will be knocking on that door, at least at the very bare minimum, if not passing it by the time we get to like 2028. I think what they should be doing is convincing the privateers to try to go over to the Asian Le Mans series. Tell them, if you do this, you're going to get an automatic invite to the 24 Hours of Le Mans just by entering a hypercar over in the Asian Le Mans series. Yeah, I know it's not 100% fair because you don't get that same treatment in IMSA. But we're talking about 2 ACO back series here, so it, to me, makes more sense. I think that's pretty much what the privateers are after. They're after racing at Le Mans. They would save money by running in a regional championship that is the Asian Le Mans series. They don't have to spend as much money going around the world. And it also solves the car issue that we have in the World Endurance Championship as well. So to me, if you can convince teams to do that, then that's sort of a win all around. And I think that's the way they should approach this.
I look forward to inevitably being frustrated when McLaren announces that they're going to do the Asian Le Mans series instead of IMSA. So
I wouldn't expect that. So
we'll wait and see, I guess.
Well, if they did, it would be a customer team. So
yes,
that's the big thing here.
That's true.
I don't see any other questions on the chat on my side because, again, I'm missing some of the ones from earlier in the episode. I don't know if you had access to some of those from earlier that I should go back and
I'm just glancing through here. Yeah, just lots of comments, you know, comments from Le Mans. Not too many questions per se. So we might be just about ready to wrap up then. I guess we can talk about maybe this comment sort of wrap up. But Mr. Waffles says, I much doubt it, but that's one of the only ways I can see HRC running a car outside the US. Could see a Super GT team running a car there being the Asian Le Mans series. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like HRC has kind of put a cold blanket on really a lot of the thought of them running anywhere outside of IMSA right now. We did kind of have some hope based on some comments from last year, but I don't know. I feel like those have kind of fizzled out right now. So I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on HRC in the Asian Le Mans series?
Well, yeah, I tend to agree with what you said there. And we got, am I good?
No, you're good. You're good.
We're good. Oh. We're approaching the end of the episode. I don't have to deal with this next week. Yeah, I tend to agree with what you're saying there. I think even with last week, we got comments from HRC saying it's really not on their radar at all right now to even run in the WEC. So if that's the case, I really don't see them showing up in the Asian Le Mans series. Now, if they were to do that, even under that situation, would they even get an invite to race at Le Mans? Because you don't have that BOP data up against the other cars in the World Endurance Championship. So I wouldn't imagine so. It's the same scenario that Meyer Shank Racing is in right now. If they win the IMSA championship, the team will get an invite to Le Mans, but they won't be running an Acura. So I think the way forward for seeing HRC at Le Mans would be they need to run 2 cars in the World Endurance Championship. I'm still not seeing that happen anytime soon, if ever, at this point.
Yep. Yeah, not looking too good for that.
I think I'm going to wrap it up on that.
I think so.
Past 1 o'clock in the morning here. There's plenty to discuss from Le Mans this year. Ultimately, there were things that I noted down and wanted to talk about, but didn't get around to. Maybe we'll jump into some more of those at another point. But overall, as I said, I gave a quick overview as to what I thought on the race. There were, like I said, more details we could jump into, but we'll save those for an extra day. This weekend, we've got you.
I'll pick up from Chris here since he cut out. I think I know where he's going with this. I will be at the 6 Hours of the Glen in beautiful upstate New York, camping out by the bus stop. So if you're at the track this weekend and you see a Canadian dude walking around and that looks like me, well, I mean, I guess you're not going to look at somebody and be like, that guy's a Canadian. But if you hear a Canadian dude walking around that looks like me, that would indeed be me. I'm going to do a little meetup if anybody's going to be at the Glen for the second race, I think, of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo series this weekend. I think that's Saturday afternoon, I believe, just after WeatherTech Championship qualifying. So hopefully we'll see some of you guys drop by and say hi. But yeah, I'll be in Watkins Glen, and then Chris is going to be at the Nürburgring, aren't you?
I will be. It's my first time driving up there tomorrow. Very excited for that one. I have no idea what I'm getting into with that. So the people who will be trying to make sure that I understand everything that I need to know for that race. We'll discuss it a little bit in next week's show. Obviously going to try to keep it mostly focused on the Glen, though, as is sort of what we try to do with this podcast, talk about WC and IMSA, but of course, some of the Nürburgring stuff will slip into that show as well. So if you have any questions, I guess, from that race next week, best time to ask them. And yeah, I'll be trying to catch up on Watkins Glen when I can, if I'm not sleeping. But if not, I have a 7-hour flight home on Monday. Perfect. And it's a 6-hour race. So do the math and figure out what I'll be doing if I have nothing else to do.
There you go.
All right, we're going to call for that one. Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you did, or if you're on a podcasting platform, we'll be back next week, normal time, 8 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. More reliable Wi-Fi for me. And it's also going to be a lot cooler as well, because I'll tell you what, it is. I love a lot of things about Germany. Okay, German food's been great. German beer has been great. It's
AC
hot
is not one of them.
I'll tell you what. AC doesn't exist. So
yeah.
Anyway, we're leaving it at that. Hope to see you all next week.
Cam says don't get lost in the forest, so or don't get a little tipsy and wander off in the forest. So yeah, we need you for next week.
We're not running that during the race. Yeah, the race is going to be too much as is. So
yep,
we'll survive that one. We'll be here next week. Hope to catch you all there, and take care.